Good morning, everyone. I love memes. I think this one's funny. And it says, how could people let it get to that point? And he's reading a Germany 1933 to 1945, but he's wearing a face shield and a mask and an N95 mask to boot. I went to the mail yesterday and I got my postcard. It's a big postcard, actually. So it's kind of, it's nice. It's got the stamp already drawn on, postage paid. Right? So I'll be sending my postcard to the Parliament Hill, and I don't know if I'm going to send it to Justin Trudeau or if I'm going to send it to somebody on Parliament. Maybe I'll send it to an MP who I think will, like Polyev or Derek Sloan or something like that, who would present it in the House of Commons maybe. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I got it in the mail, so I've been talking about that. I thought I'd let you know. So that's good news to start things off with. Okay, let's look at racism. Racism and white supremacy. Rebel News says blackface enthusiast says parliament built on racism. Okay, for more context, I got the. He was asked about the royal family. I think that it's an interesting choice for Trudeau to backhandedly call all systems built by white people racist. I think that's an echo, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's very interesting when he's asked about this and his stated goal to remove colonialism, I think is what it said, from Canada. His response is like, we all know that our systems are inherently built on racism and they're inherently racist. But my problem with all of this is there's never any specific, like this thing here, this practice that we do is racist. If you could point at something like that and say, yes, this thing that we do, that's racist, or we should have a conversation about how this could potentially lead to excluding somebody for whatever, that's maybe okay. But saying that whole institution is racist and it's full of systemic racism without citing specific examples of things that need changing is just needless sniping, is just needlessly taking something down. It's like calling somebody kind of fat if they're not. Right? Like backhandedly saying you should be working on your appearance because it kind of like subpar, right? Like, no, that's not okay to do to a person, and it's not okay to do to a whole society. And this is the Prime Minister doing this. Okay, here we go.
Prime Minister Tom Perry from CBC. I know you don't want to get involved in a constitutional debate. I know you don't want to comment on the royal family. But I would like to ask you, how do you reconcile your support for the monarchy with your stated desire to dismantle the legacy of colonialism in this country?
There are many institutions that we have in this country, including that big building right across the street from us, Parliament, that has and is built around a system of colonialism, of discrimination, of systemic racism in all of our institutions. But the answer, Tom, is not to suddenly toss out all the institutions and start over. The answer is to look very carefully at those systems and listen to Canadians who face discrimination every single day and whenever they interact with those institutions, to understand the barriers, the inequities and inequalities that exist within our institutions that need to be addressed. That
talks a good game. I'm going to stop him there. He talks a good game, but it's not real. It's not real. Like if somebody actually had an issue, there are ways to address that. Remember when Brenda Lucki was asked, how is the RCMP racist? And she said, no, we're not racist. We've got lots of checks and balances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're not racist. And then a week later, she's like, oh, you know what? Actually, me and Gail had a conversation and I realized that the RCMP is completely racist. And then when asked to give an example, she said that the RCMP racistly asked women to jump 6 feet. And then she said, and Gail will come out and give us some other examples soon. Gail? So I think that it's interesting to just take it down, take down the institutions, take down the entire system. You know, that Parliament building over there and everything that it's created, everything from Parliament on that's Canadian, built on colonialism and racist. I can't give you examples except for that RCMP one. But, racist, right? Says the Prime Minister of the country, of the racist country that he's presiding over, the racist genocidal country that he's presiding over. And he's telling the world that Canada should lead on anything? Really? Really? I mean, there's consequences for your nonsense vomited out of your mouth, right? And this is the Prime Minister. It's very, very interesting. But I think I get the angle. I came across this. Debate emerges over racism and white supremacy in Oregon math instruction. It's not just Oregon as well. I've heard that they're trying to decolonize Newtonian math, and they're now just they're saying the basic rules of physics, not Newtonian math, basic rules of physics. So let's get Newton out of there. He was far too white to be given credit for the basic rules of physics. They just existed, and who cares who discovered them and wrote them down, right? That doesn't matter. That's too white. So if math is inherently racist, and if Parliament is inherently racist, maybe math is inherently racist. Who needs evidence to make such allegations? You don't need evidence. Math is racist. If math is racist, then so is the budget, right? The budget is numbers. Numbers are racist because math is racist. Yahtzee. Budgets are racist. Okay? Don Davies MP, and he's an NDP MP, he says the Trudeau government is now saying no federal budget in March, making it 2 years without a federal budget because the budget is racist. The longest gap in Canadian history. Every G7 nation, not every G7 nation, Canada's a G7 nation and we have not come out with a budget, but he says every G7 nation produced a budget in 2020. So did every province and territory. This is blatant unaccountability to Parliament and Canadians. So they're spending our money, and I long make the comparison to if you get into a very big crisis, is your first priority to max out the credit cards and then give all that money to charity? No? Then why is it acceptable for our government to max out our credit cards, give a lot of that money to charity, and then not be accountable, not even balance the checkbook, right? We've got a financial snapshot we'd like to share with you that is not governed by any kind of check or balance or anything like that. We're not committing to anything. We're just showing you where some of the money maybe has gone kind of ish, right? A budget actually has, checks and balances. Do you remember when it used to be New Shoe Day, right? Like in the finance minister, I think it was Paul Martin who did this, and there was one after him as well. Anyway, we'd come out and put the new shoes on, and then Harper's guys did this too. Anyway, regardless, some of them. I'm not sure when the shoe thing ended. Anyway, these are traditions that have gone by the wayside, I suppose, and that's maybe by design. But budgets aren't tradition. They should be introduced. They should be held accountable, the politicians. If the provinces can come up with a budget during this crisis, then surely our unbelievably intelligent Rhodes Scholar, finance minister, deputy prime minister, and all-around negotiator extraordinaire, if she's wearing the right dress, Chrystia Freeland should be able to deliver, right? Why not? Happy National Women's Day. Here's the budget early, right? Nope. Sorry. Happy International Women's Day. We're going to have a she session. I mean, it was funny, except it's not. Okay, let's get to the racist budget. No obvious plans for 2021 budget. Justin Trudeau tells reporters the debt ceiling hit $1.83 trillion this year. I've been using the term like close to $2 trillion because that's how much they're borrowing. Who cares where it's going? Who cares for accountability? They're, keeping Canadians safe. Sorry, that was bad Christian Bale Batman, not Justin Trudeau growling. I'll work on that. Here is the annual federal deficit in Canada. This is the federal deficit, okay? Understand why the Liberals haven't had a budget in 2 years now? Okay, so I'll make this bigger again. Yeah, there we go. Now you can see the whole thing. So that's the deficit. When it goes down, we had surplus money, okay? This is money we've borrowed, right? So the deficit is high because we've borrowed a lot of money, right? And it's never gone above... I think it's Bank of Canada bond purchase 50, 100, and it's in trillions, I think. Oh, billions. It's in billions. So we've never gone above $50 billion in bonds or federal deficit of $100 billion prior to 2020. And this is going back to 1983. And within those years, we had a decade of surpluses, and those are mostly conservative. There's some liberal years in there, surpluses, and very low debt after the 95 debt crisis, right? And now, the 95 debt crisis looks like a sunny day in June, right? Oh man, to have under $100 billion in debt and less Bank of Canada bonds than we've had in history. That would be nice, or we've had in the last few years. Man, it seems concerning, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem concerning? Yeah, there's a good meme for it. Seems concerning. Seems like something we should be paying attention to, but apparently that's racist. Trudeau cannot afford to let real Canadians see the numbers, says James Holden. He's afraid the Canadians might have a glimmer of understanding the taxpayers in big trouble. Here's Evan Solomon, and I'm going to show a little bit of this. This is a heated back and forth. She says that they're going to deliver a budget in 2021. Justin Trudeau was making indications that there wouldn't be a budget in 2021. Let's listen in. Evan Solomon does take her to task, but he's on board with this whole vaccine thing. It's very strange because a lot of the Canadian media is playing both sides of the fence. Like on one side, like Brian Lilley and Evan Sullivan, on one side they'll go after somebody and they'll seem like they're on your side, and it's like, yeah, man, fight for us. And then on the other side they'll say the only way to reopen the economy is with vaccines, and here's how we're going to roll out the vaccines, knowing full well that like anybody with any kind of sense that's looking at all of the stuff that I'm looking at, and these people are smart people, these are not stupid people. They're looking at all the stuff that I'm looking at and more, and they have more access to certain things. They've got access to sources and whatever. Inside scoops, people call them, they don't call me, some people call me. But these people are intelligent people. Anybody with sense looking at this stuff understands what's going on, understands that there's more than meets the eye here. And yes, there's editorial rooms. Yes, they have meetings that say, stay away from this and all that. Same time, I mean, come on, right? Like you can't pretend to play straight on the budget and then completely go crooked on COVID-19, right? Oh, vaccines are the only way to open our economy. It just doesn't work like that, man. Like the trust in institutions is a thing, and it's not selective, right? But there's a lot of people who still believe in the fake news. Here we go.
I'm going to ask you because it's important. It has been almost 2 years since your government released a budget. No other G7 country has waited this long. Every other province has managed to release a budget, not the federal government. Why not? And maybe you can tell us when a budget will come.
Well, first of all, I can tell you that I've been working very hard in the past few weeks on the pre-budget consultations. We actually talked about it not too long ago. 58,000 Canadians sent submissions, stakeholders, everybody participated hard, and now we're working at it to be able to present a budget 2021 and to make sure that we find a way to demonstrate how we are going to recover from this pandemic.
Any idea when, though? Because look, your government...
Budget 2021, Evan, we will be presenting.
Like, I get that being coy, but how do you expect Canadians to know about the fact your government is projecting $381 billion of deficit? That's astronomical numbers. Those are unprecedented numbers. How do you expect the opposition and Canadians to figure out what you're spending and what the impact of this when they haven't seen a budget for now 2 years? It's apparently been delayed again.
We've been clear with Canadians since last year by providing supports for families, supports for businesses.
So this is a pivot from answering the question to Canadians want to know, these are astronomical numbers, to the supports provided. Don't talk about the negative, talk about the positive. This is spin, and she's been coached, right? And the Liberals are really good at coaching. Mendocino is a pro. It's no wonder to me that he's the immigration minister, because he can sell snake oil to snakes. Would snakes buy snake oil? Anyway, regardless. This person has been coached, and she's very good. She's packaging this story up as a good news story. We're gonna have the budget in 2021, Evan. There's a lot of time left in 2021, right? Like there's only 3 months gone now, right? So 9 months left in the year. Could it be New Year's Eve on 2021, right? Like happy budget day, everyone. Like happy New Year. The other thing is she's excited about the consultation. She's trying to make a big show of everybody's getting involved and, putting their input in. And like, does anybody think their input is good? We would like to have the deficit we had before 2020. Please. Like, at this point, you're at like, stop the bleeding. What are we spending this money on? No, seriously, could we get a line, like an itemized list and the receipts, please? Because what are we spending this money on? Like, we've got the worst job numbers. We've got the worst recovery. It's the most expensive recovery in the G7, as Pierre Poilievre likes to point out over and over again. Isn't that interesting? But pay attention to what the MP is doing. I think she's an MP, or she's a budget. She's a bureaucrat who's helping, like an associate minister or something like that. Mona for it doesn't say there now, but regardless, it doesn't matter. She is putting together this positive story package for politicking, like to sell it, right? This is a product. She doesn't care about the budget. Her job is to sell the product of we're taking care of Canadians, and the budget really doesn't matter all that much. It's a problem. It's a problem. But you know what? Yesterday, amongst this budget fight, and I just thought this was funny, I tagged two of these. Trudeau more trusted with the purse strings, poll finds, boosting odds of election via National Post. What in the flying F? When did so many Canadians become stupid? No, it's faulty polling, right? It's faulty polling. This is ridiculous. Here's another one. Nick Nanos. More voters trust Justin Trudeau's party to manage Canada's finances than any other. A boost of polling confidence that could tempt him to trigger an election. Okay, so far the Conservatives are being obstructionary in Parliament, and so we need an election, says the NDP. And the media is saying, oh, everybody thinks that Justin Trudeau is doing a great job spending, right? Yesterday, March 8th, yesterday? Is that 2 days? 2 days ago. PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Office, at a loss to explain why costs of new Canadian warship, currently at $77 billion, keep rising. It started at $14 billion, climbed to an estimated $26 billion, and then to $70 billion in 2019, and Canada wants to buy 15 Type 26 ships. Quote, this is from Yves Giroux. He says, there doesn't seem to be a clear rationale when it comes to explaining these cost increases. Giroux noted during his appearance in the Commons Government Operations Committee, I'm concerned, but Canadians, says one poll, repeated and reported ad nauseum by the media on what should have been maybe like announcing the day the budget will come out day, but instead it was announcing International Women's Day, and we won't have a budget in March day. Right? Interesting. It seems like Katie Telford's pulling some strings, right? Pulling some strings to have some editorials written about, what Canadians think and about how important that budget is, right? Interesting. Trudeau more trusted with the purse strings. Sure. Right. I believe that. Okay. Moving forward. This is interesting. RCMP officers couldn't communicate before they shot at the Onslow Fire Hall because of the heavy volume of radio traffic, the police watchdog concluded. So they shot up the building, and the reason they shot up the building is because they couldn't get on the radio because there was so much radio traffic. Do you think we should shoot that building? Yeah, it looks shifty. Can we radio in to talk about that? Nah, there's a lot of people on the radio. Let's just shoot the building. You got it, partner. Go. Lock and load. Like, what happened? Who thought this was a good idea? That building looks terribly shifty. Get it? Here is Arkansas mandated masks on July 20th. They're moving into COVID. On July 20th, while neighboring Oklahoma never did. They've followed the same exact curves, almost to the exact number for the entire outbreak regardless. There's literally nothing on earth with less evidence of efficacy than masks. It's terrible. It's terrible. I've submitted multiple freedom of information requests to the Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health because I just kept getting my emails ignored. And I said, listen, I'm trying to be friendly and I just want this information. I'm interested in learning about this. But now I've requested all emails about COVID-19. Because I'm interested in the decision-making process within our public health board and why the emergency system was never brought into the loop. I'm interested, and I'm interested in how they're communicating about COVID-19 with each other. And I've also put in the request for all-cause mortality from 2010 to 2020, broken down by hospital within the health unit. How many people died and of what? So yeah, I'm interested, and now I know how to do freedom of information requests. So that's fun. Anyway, moving on. I think it's terribly interesting that you can look at a graph like this and see that masks versus no masks clearly don't make a difference, and yet we're still in a situation, and multiple states falling every day. Every day for the past week anyway. I haven't heard of any new ones today, but falling with mask mandates and COVID closures. People are opening up, and we're watching that in Canada, and who knows? I don't know what's going to happen next. It's very, very concerning. Tokyo Olympics, the 2020 Olympics held in 21, are going to be held without foreign spectators, so that's interesting. I thought that was kind of, I wasn't planning on going to Tokyo for the games anyway, but it's an interesting choice, right? How much are they playing the COVID game, or is this just erring on the side of caution? I don't know. If you're a foreign traveler and you've come with your Olympic team, can you watch? Or is it like, no, sorry. Didn't you see no foreign travelers? Moving into long-term care, Roman Babbers, he's an MP in Ontario, and he was ejected from Ontario PC caucus, which is the leading caucus for Doug Ford's caucus, for daring to question Ford's lockdowns. And so since then, he's been on a Twitter rampage to call out Doug Ford and his missteps. Here's another one. Options to protect long-term care homes from second wave were deemed too expensive by Ford. In Fordonomics, it's better to lock down 15 million healthy Ontarians instead of using federal money to protect vulnerable long-term care residents. Doug must be held accountable. Yeah, I think all of our politicians need to be held accountable at every single level. It's very, very, very scary what's happened. Here's a report. Here's Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons talking, well, the current House of Commons, talking about the misery index, and Canadians are miserable because their government is miserable. Here's Poilievre.
Carleton. Dr. Richard Odysee, health statistician and economist at Memorial University, has published a COVID misery index. And the results for Canada are, well, miserable. In fact, Canada ranks 11th because of the government's poor performance on the health and economic side. With the worst deficit, the worst unemployment, and the worst vaccination rates in the G7, why is this government so miserable?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can't speak for the misery on the other side of the House, but let me just say on our side of the House, we are so grateful to Canadians for their hard work and their resilience. And thanks to that hard work and the strong support from our government, let me share the great news with this House that in the fourth quarter of last year, our GDP grew by nearly 10%. That is higher than the US, the UK, France, Germany, or Italy. Well done, Team Canada.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Excellent grades for Canadians, terrible grades for this government. Last quarter of the year, of course, they had far more ground to make up because our economic downfall was far greater. In fact, after all the quarters are done, Canada still has the highest unemployment in the G7, which that minister and the Prime Minister have long said is the best measurement to determine the job market. And now, an independent scientific study shows that Canada has the highest COVID misery index out of 11 countries. We rank 11th out of 15, even worse than the United States. Why such miserable results?
I don't know that they want good results. I don't know that they want not positive results. I think that, no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the motivation is for keeping people locked down. I don't know what the motivation is for allowing clearly power-drunk public health people to maintain a reign of terror on the province or on the country. I don't know that I could do that. I don't know that I could sit back and just allow it. Both like Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau. But I don't know. I don't claim to know their motivations, so have no idea. I thought that Saskatchewan was more open than this. Saskatchewan is expanding its private gathering restrictions to increase to 10 people. That's up from 5 people. So apparently they're back to using bubbles. So that's weird. I think that it's strange that we're in that kind of situation where bubbles are a thing. Here is Ohio. And this is, I feel like I've been in this person's shoes. This is a well-researched, well put together 1 minute and 40 seconds where she asks questions of the regional experts to explain their choices when it clearly can't be seen in the graph. And I fear that she will have the same meet the same end that I did, basically, which is please go away and please stop bothering us. We'd really like to be left alone now. So anyway, here is a great presentation from Ohio, and I will hold this up. I wish that we had the graph that she's holding up that I could put up on the screen a bit better, but we don't. So here we go.
I would like you to examine, this is also in my written testimony, this graph showing ICU bed occupancy in Ohio over the course of this pandemic. This graph is taken from the Ohio Hospital Association, which feeds the data into our coronavirus.ohio.gov dashboard. This is our hospitalization data. It's direct census of the day. And it shows April 10th until March 8th, 2021. I have deliberately left off the x-axis, which shows time. And I invite the experts advising the governor to please locate when mandates went into effect or were lifted, Where was it that businesses were first allowed to open in the spring? Where on this graph did the George Floyd protests occur? Where were the mask mandates implemented? When was the curfew put into place? When was it removed? Where is Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's? All of these events, we are told, had large effects on the activity of the virus in Ohio. If that is true, then it should be simple to identify all of those events on this graph. But it's clearly not so simple to do. Instead of being able to quickly and easily identify those supposedly powerful events, what we see is a very classic epidemiological curve demonstrating Farr's law. Farr's law is a 180-year-old observation that epidemics rise and fall following a predictable, roughly bell-shaped curve. Our actions have amounted to little to nothing over the past year.
Our actions have amounted from little to nothing over the last year. Ouch, right? That's an expensive nothing to purchase, right? Expensive nothing to purchase. And there is, well, as I showed you at the top of this COVID segment, masks versus no masks don't make much of a difference. Here's mask states versus no mask states. Again, the sources on the graph, CDC, covidtracking.com. And it's indexed from the 1st of December 2020 to the February 21st, 2021. The 2nd of March 2021, excuse me. But despite no real correlation or real evidence that masking works or doesn't work, or all of the evidence to the contrary, Alberta is not allowing churches to open until stage 3 of reopening Alberta. So Pastor James will stay, I think that's who it is, James Coates, I think, but sorry if I got that wrong, will stay in prison, I suppose. And that's terrible. That's awful. Ontario says it will give municipalities and Indigenous communities $255 million to address an increase in COVID-19 outbreaks in homeless shelters across the province. How many homeless have died? Maybe I'll send a Freedom of Information request for my local, and maybe I'll send one to Toronto Public Health to find out how many homeless have died in Toronto. I fear that there will be, and I hope that there will be very few, but I haven't. Usually, if something like that has happened, if there's been a lot of people who died with COVID-19 in a certain population, you would see news about that, right? Like, think long-term care. But I haven't seen any news about homeless. I've seen news about homeless encampments being dismantled and people moved. Homeless people having rooms in hotels. Central Toronto didn't want their, had the hotel shut down because it was unsafe. And now there's one shelter there, but before there were 3. It just seems we're giving a whole bunch of money to something that sounds good on paper, but doesn't have any proof that is actually happening. I'd love to see if there's any proof that there's a meaningful increase in homeless people being admitted to hospital for this. Where are they being admitted from? Which homeless encampments or which homeless shelters are having unbelievable outbreaks? I haven't even heard of that. And usually, again, you'd hear about that kind of thing. Coronavirus variant. Let's get into variants. Coronavirus variant B117, that's the UK variant, because, saying that's racist, apparently, is at least 30% more deadly than the previous strains, a major UK study concludes. It. It's got to be true. It's got to be true. So Canada is building a field hospital, right? We're setting it up because the variant is possible. Third wave COVID-19, right? Be frightened, everybody. And here's how the variant's doing in England. Here's how the UK's variant is doing in the UK. So they're using this to scare the heck out of everybody. And my goodness, look at that. Look at that. Pretty big reduction from January to March, right? Interesting. Very interesting, right? So the UK variant is coming, and again, the data doesn't matter, right? Data doesn't matter. Here is Trudeau not wanting to deal with the constitutional fallout, the constitutional questions. And we're going to come back to this. This is the vaccine segment. We're going to come back to this at the end of this segment, just to remind ourselves what he said about he doesn't want to have constitutional questions, unless I moved it up. I'm not sure if I did. Hold on a second. I didn't, so we'll come back to this, but we'll listen. 39 seconds of Trudeau. I know, sorry. Here we go.
Right now, my single most important priority is getting through this pandemic and rebuilding the economy. everything we're doing every single day in terms of keeping Canadians safe, of getting vaccines here as quickly as possible and into as many Canadians' arms as we possibly can, is our singular focus, along with preparing the economy to come roaring back as quickly as possible. I can understand some people are looking for constitutional conversations. I'm not going to engage in those right now. I am focused on getting us through this pandemic.
Constitution. Oh, right? It's kind of off-putting. Again, Prime Minister. No, we're not going to have a constitutional conversation. Here is obstetrics group welcomes Ontario move to prioritize pregnant women for COVID vaccine. I think this is a mistake, to say the least, but I'm not a doctor, but it seems odd. Here's guidelines for vaccinating pregnant women from the CDC. The page was updated in August of 2016. It says, risk to developing fetus from vaccination of the mother during pregnancy is theoretical. No evidence exists of risk to the fetus from vaccinating pregnant women with inactivated virus or bacterial vaccines or toxoids. Live vaccines administered to a pregnant woman pose a theoretical risk to the fetus. Therefore, live attenuated virus and live bacterial vaccines generally are contradicted during pregnancy, not given during pregnancy. And so which is the COVID vaccine? Checkmate. It's neither, right? It's neither. But again, I don't think that matters. Ontario. So in the tweet, I think it's strange that the Ottawa Citizen is touting this as a good idea. It makes it seem like this is a good idea for pregnant women. And the health minister says, Ontario's health minister, Christine Elliott, said her team has been learning a lot about the vaccine in a very short time. Quote, though it's not as strict as it was, they're still recommending that women who are pregnant, ... should speak with their primary care physician or nurse practitioner before receiving the vaccine, she told reporters Monday. But the rest of this article, I'll carry on. Saskatchewan includes pregnant women with significant heart disease in the second phase of its provincial vaccination plan. Other provinces leave pregnancy out of their plans, issuing separate advice that pregnant people should consult with their doctors about the vaccine. Quebec's plan lumps pregnant women with children, saying their eligibility will be, quote, determined based on future studies on vaccine safety. Dr. Heather Watson, an obstetrics and gynecology fellow at the University of Manitoba, said Ontario has done the right thing. Quote, we know that COVID, when it's severe in pregnancy, our research shows that the risk for intensive care unit admission is about 3 times that of a non-pregnant individual, she said in an interview Sunday. We know that vaccines historically work just as effectively in pregnancy as they do outside of pregnancy. Again, I think that it's really interesting the line that this article is taking when we don't have any data about this. We don't have any data about this. It's very, very shocking that it's being pushed in this way. That the vaccine is being pushed to like everybody, and we don't have the data. We don't have the data, and we're going to get into the 4-month thing. We're getting into 4 months, extending the dose to 4 months when Pfizer, and I don't know if Moderna has said no, but Pfizer said no. Pfizer said we don't have data on this. Like, this is an experiment, basically. And there's other people who are saying this is an experiment. I'm going to cue this clip up, and then I'll show you what this is about. Hold on. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, that's right, Farah. Listen, the federal conservatives brought this up in question period today, our story, and this letter, that a joint letter that a number of experts have signed on to, they say it's a result of a flawed plan and a government tuning out experts. This joint letter, a show of unity from some of Canada's leading scientists and doctors at several of the biggest health institutions in the country. All of them questioning a plan to delay second doses of COVID-19 vaccinations to 4 months.
To some degree, it is an experiment because we don't have hard clinical data.
Dr. Brad Waters is the Vice President of Science and Research at the University Health Network in Toronto. He shares his colleagues' concerns, tweeting, Canada conducting a population-level experiment.
We're only going to really know what happens, after a 4-month delay when we're looking backwards. And Canada is the only country that's elected to go out that far.
The letter was sent to officials in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta, and to Canada's top doctor, Theresa Tam.
I'll stop it there. They ignored it. They ignored it. Surprising no one, right? Pfizer Canada does not recommend lengthening the time between doses. Justin Trudeau doesn't care. He wants to be reelected. No interest in science, only when it suits his purpose. So it's very interesting that we've got the manufacturer saying no, but the NACI, the National Vaccination Advisory Council or whatever it's called, has said, yes, we can do this. So who do you believe? I mean, not the manufacturer, right? They're probably spreading fake news. What kind of incentive do they have to tell the truth? It's not like you can sue them anyway. New outbreak of COVID-19 in BC care home where residents and staff were already vaccinated. That's not good, right? This is a CBC article. I'm not gonna read in depth in this one, but that's concerning, right? I thought that the vaccine was the way out of this, right? I thought it was the only way out, despite the fact that we've seen a whole bunch of places, Florida, Arizona, South Dakota, North Dakota, a whole bunch of places open up without a vaccine. Apparently that was the way out of it, and apparently not, because apparently even if you're vaccinated, there can be an outbreak in the care home that's already had vaccinated people, right? Very crazy. Poor messaging and confusion over who is leading Ontario's response to the pandemic are undermining the public trust in the province's COVID-19 immunization plan, crisis communication experts say. Yes, the experts can read a room, eh? Going on Twitter, you can see very clearly that people aren't buying the bullshit. I'm sorry, they're just not buying it. Even, it's not just me. And there's a story that surprised me. We'll talk about China before the end of the show, and that surprised me. What the Globe and, or not the Globe and Mail, the National Post is publishing about China, that surprised me. But by and large, the pulse of, and this is maybe Twitter, because on Facebook has gotten rid of most conservative people. Most conservative people, if you're a conservative person, your wife has Facebook, and that's how you stay in contact with your kids. Your wife will show you the phone that has the picture of whatever the kid's posting, and that's right? Like if the kid's still on Facebook. But a lot of conservative people have been driven from Facebook. I think these platforms are going to collapse under their own weight. I think they're going to just, like MySpace, like Dig, like these places that, and I mean, Reddit's done. Reddit, I think, is almost completely done. It's turned into what, it's got more porn now, and it's aimed at teenagers. It's aimed at young people, whereas before it used to be more of an intellectual website. 2008 to 2012. 2012, it started to turn. But it's interesting, right? Like the messaging and confusion over it. You can look at a news feed and see upset and dissent. You can look at the responses to the brand on Twitter, and you can look at the responses to the brand on Facebook, and you can see people are upset. And that's more what I'm talking about, rather than the discord in your news feed, right? There's some of it there, especially if you're on Facebook, then there's less of it. There's some of it in my news feed, but I'm subscribed to people who are not counterculture. I'm subscribed to people who are going to be in the public limelight, who are going to be getting people who are upset at them, tweeting at them, etc. So it's less likely, or it's more likely for me to see somebody engaging in being angry at the person than it is for like somebody who's subscribed to like Volkswagen, to see people who are upset, unless they've like stepped in it, right? Like Burger King, right? Women belong in the kitchen on International Women's Day. Genius marketing, guys. Funny. But the communication is, it's clear that people are sick and tired of this. It's been a year and there doesn't seem to be a plan. Yesterday I said, if I hired somebody to deal with the flooding in my basement, and after a year I had $1 trillion bill and the flood was worse, or we didn't have any better options than to bail water with a leftovers container, right? Like a bad leftovers container, or just a lid, right? Oh, if we just do this, it doesn't get any deeper, right? Like this is a bad plan, and I'm going to fire you for a real plumber, okay? I don't want you managing the finances anymore, Justin. Here's another one. Australian health minister hospitalized in serious condition after receiving AstraZeneca. There's a communication put out by the Honorable Greg Hunt, and they say that he fell ill due to an infection. It had nothing to do with the vaccine, but it was a day after he had the vaccine, and there was no indication that he had an infection the day before. There was pictures and stuff. So that's interesting. That's an interesting thing, right? Like the vaccines seem as mandatory as the masks seem, which they're not mandatory. You don't have to do that, but a lot of places pretend that you have to do that. And now we're going to be in a situation where employment is going to be depending on this kind of stuff. Employment is already depending on wearing masks. If you say, I don't think I'm going to wear a mask, you watch your hours get cut. right? Until you wear a mask. And then they may even refer you to like a psychological help or something like that, right? But crazy world, crazy. But here is Dr. Kaur, and she says, she's responding to Dr. Brian Goldman. Goldman says, I suspect that frontline healthcare workers who refuse the COVID vaccine while providing direct patient care will come under increasing scrutiny. This isn't about refusing seasonal flu shots or marginal efficacy, and it's not about personal choice. What? My body, my choice, man. And Dr. Kaur says, are you advocating against protecting constitutional rights of all healthcare workers, including freedom of speech and the freedom to choose medical treatments and interventions? Have you heard of the Nuremberg Code or of the Hippocratic Oath? Yeah, yep. Doctors are very, they can be easily convinced, right? That Hippocratic Oath is optional, right? I'm pretty sure at the beginning they're like, do no harm or whatever. And all doctors know the or whatever, right? That's how seriously they take it, right? Okay, that's not, like, it's a very serious thing. I'm making a joke. Okay, back to this. Dr. Gill says vaccine passports are imposed coercion restrictions on medical intervention that not only violates UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Canadian Charter, but violates the very core of medical ethics, informed voluntary consent, Declaration of Geneva, and the Nuremberg Code. Yeah, Canada working on vaccine passports with G7 countries. We found this healthcare minister who's better qualified to be a graphic designer. But we found this healthcare minister who was willing to sign off on it. So Yahtzee, right? Do no harm or whatever, right? And here is a doctor saying immunity passports are immoral. We tread on dangerous ground. It's 3 minutes. I'm not going to play it, but it's worth watching. He lays out the case why it's immoral. You know what's not going to matter? Did you watch the Bath & Body Works attack? The one woman in Bath & Body Works didn't have a mask on, so 2 Bath & Body Works employees attacked her. And there's charges coming that the employees are wrong. You can't do that. But pretty soon, if it's not safe to walk down the streets if you're not wearing a mask, because people will randomly attack you, it doesn't matter what the laws are. I mean, it does matter what the laws are because those people will deserve to be dealt with under the law. But it's that culture, right? And then tradition. And then nobody questions it. It doesn't matter if it's a law or not. We just do it because that's, because the blue circle is bigger than the red circle to me. Don't ask questions, right? It's very concerning. The loss of our civil liberties is very, very concerning. New York had asymptomatic testing in schools, and it came out to, I think, 0.5%. Yeah, 36,000 tested, 191 positive, 0.5%. And that's within the margin of noise, margin of error, margin of false positives. Very, very interesting where the data leads us and where the media takes us, right? Very interesting. Here is moving on, military. This is Vance and the allegations across the board of different people with military. Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson is the newest one, is facing allegations of inappropriate conduct in the 90s, though, including suggestive comments, unwanted sexual advances, predatory behavior, and relationships with female subordinates in the late 1990s. Interesting timing. Let's just, it's time to flush the whole military. Let's just get it good and gone, right? 4 olds. Bye-bye, military. And Justin Trudeau weighs in. He says, this needs to end. PM on latest forces misconduct harassments allegations. This needs to end. Yeah, well, good luck. Majority of Canadians. This is what I was talking about earlier. Surprising result. Majority of Canadians view China as the biggest security threat with global war of attrition already underway. Really? I thought that if anybody spoke about China like that, they would be quickly removed from Twitter and the wrong think on YouTube and all of that other fun stuff. But apparently, this is mainstream enough to talk about that a majority of Canadians, the same Canadians maybe who view Justin Trudeau's management of the purse strings as positive. Who are you polling? Majority of Canadians? The majority of Canadians that I know look at me very quizzically and confusedly when I say CCP communism is a big threat in this country. And they say, ha, ha, ha. Like, I watched shows when I was a kid, and there was a movie on, and it was a movie about McCarthy. And McCarthyism in the 1950s and 60s was trying to find communists within the U.S. government, trying to subvert the government. And it was made to be funny. It was made to be like... McCarthy was like a funny character, like he was the bad guy kind of. He was an idiot, right? Like, think Trump, right? If you were watching Trump and saw what Trump was doing and then read the media about Trump, that's kind of the break, right? But I believed the media line. I believed that McCarthy was a kook. And until I realized that, holy cow, like, yeah, like subversion is kind of how the communists do it, right? And so it's interesting that we're kind of seeing the same style of media, making buffoons of people who bring it up, of people who talk about it, right? It's seen as not a legitimate threat when we've got like COVID and climate change, right? Oh, wear your mask, stay home, stay safe, right? But the reality is, like, if you're a Uyghur, like it's a clear and present danger, right? And if you're a guy named Michael in China, watch out, right? Watch out. Very interesting. Very interesting. Here's Laurie Goldstein talking about China too. He says, what could possibly go wrong? Canadian Linked Foundation offers business class travel, 5-star hotel accommodation, and paid lectures at universities and hospitals in China in exchange for research from academics and scientists. How much are they paying? 5-star hotel, you say? Do I have to take is there a COVID passport? Oh, there's a social credit score. Oh, right. So you do have to trade something if you want to move to communist China. Breaking, this is election talk. The Liberals are once again playing defense for the PM by filibustering at the PROC committee to prevent a vote on a motion calling for Justin Trudeau to come and explain to Canadians why he prorogued Parliament and cancelled all wee scandal studies. It's been like the NDP and the Liberals saying the Conservatives are not filibustering, but are being obstructionist with regards to the governance and getting bills passed, etc. They're voting no, and things aren't getting passed, and that's been an explanation for needing an election. But now it's the Liberals that are refusing to move forward on anything. It's the Liberals that are saying that are grinding things to a halt, and it's always been like that. And I think that the Conservatives give up way too early. I think that like you want to sit here and do nothing but this. All right, let's do nothing but this for the entire 4 months that we've got this seated. Like we won't get anything done. We just want to have this one question answered across every single committee. If they want to filibuster, whose fault is that? How is that the Conservatives' fault? It's not. I blame the Conservatives for folding far too early. They got no fight in them. It's unbelievable. Fight, for crying out loud. Hold the people accountable who are refusing. Like, put that filibuster on YouTube and just shame the crap out of them instead of saying, well, I guess they're filibustering, so we'll try and get this other thing done. Weak leadership, man. Weak. And it's frustrating to watch. Here is Manitoba frontline hydro workers begin striking on Tuesday afternoon. That's not great news. It's cold, right? It's getting warmer, but you don't want to have hydro workers striking. That's not great. Here is, this is the charging station for the Tesla chargers. And that's a big diesel generator to make sure that the chargers all have power. Because if the chargers didn't have enough power to power all the cars, right, that would be not great for Tesla owners, right? But the funny part is, the more I look into this green energy and the green power, Tesla and electric trucks, electric cars, gasoline is a liquid battery with much more energy per milliliter than a battery pack of a similar size. Like if you've got a gas tank that's got 450 kilometers in it, let's say, and the power cell that can go 450 kilometers, well, it's going to take a couple of hours to fill that power cell. And maybe you've got rapid charging. Okay, fine. Maybe it takes half an hour. But the battery, the gasoline, I can like put into my tank in 2 minutes or less. And that battery can like tow a boat, or the gasoline can tow a boat, right? And then if you run out, you can just fill it up again in 2 minutes. You don't have to wait 8 hours or anything like that, right? You don't have to plan it based on, and like, man, the more I look into it, the more terrible an idea electric cars are. Like, sure, if you want to use an little electric robot that runs around your warehouse, but I mean, if your warehouse is 24/7, the battery's got to charge some point, right? How many robots do you have? Do you have double the robots to do 2 shifts? Maybe that's economically viable for you, right? And maybe in the constant environment of the warehouse, that makes perfect sense. But when you have a car that has to do summer and winter with extreme temperatures at both ends, like, this is insane. This is an insane use of resources. It doesn't make any sense. Like, when I was younger, I believed in this stuff. Like, I believed that this stuff would be just around the corner. It's only a matter of time before the battery overtakes and it's free, or the solar would be viable. We just have to get better at collecting the energy. And that was about, I don't know, more than 5 years ago. I was in like early 30s at that point in time. And I thought that, yeah, this was viable, because anybody who would look into that, there's a lot of positive articles and talking about how it's just around the corner, it's just around the corner. But it's been just around the corner since 2008. And it's never actually been viable. Same with self-driving cars. It's never been viable. The wind turbines, the windmills that create power, unless you're on a river or something like that and harnessing the power of the river, it's not viable. It's not going to work. It's not going to replace fossil fuels, not by a long shot, and not even close. Like now, Tesla is not even close. Not even close. And you can believe that they are, and they've got great stock markets and all that other stuff, but the stock markets are all based on subsidies, based on governments giving Tesla lots of money and orders for electric cars. Faulty, fake, right? And the other car companies are getting in on electric cars to get the government money. It has nothing to, as far as I know, it has nothing to do with the efficacy of the vehicle versus gasoline. Like just pound for pound and expense for expense. If it's straight up car with no subsidy, the gas powered $15,000 car wins, like hands down by a lot. Environmental and bang for your buck, in my opinion. Anyway, that's enough for me. I'm way off politics here, but not really. I mean, they're selling it to us like it's the savior of mankind and savior of Canada, and it's not true. Like anybody who's spent any time in the oil and gas industry, anybody who's spent any time spent even one full year actually really trying to solve the real problems in these types of industries like solar power plants, windmill, would know all of this stuff. It would not take this long for them to realize that there are serious flaws that can not really be fixed if you're comparing apples to apples. Anybody would know this. This isn't a big leap or anything like that. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's math, basic math. Okay, anyway, that's enough for me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. There's a new episode from Greg and I yesterday. And have a wonderful, wonderful